So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dan. I work here at the Quogue Wildlife Refuge. I'm the animal care coordinator and as well as an environmental educator. So today you guys are going to meet the animals here at the refuge. Now, before we get started, I'd just love to talk about the refuge. So we are a 305-acre preserve with over 7 miles of hiking trails. We're open from sunrise all the way to sunset, and we're completely free. Here at the refuge, a wildlife refuge is a very special place. It's a sanctuary for animals. And so, of course, so within all the acreage, we have lots of wild animals, but we do have some animals that live in captivity. Now, they are a little bit different in this aspect that they do need very special care. A lot of them have very special injuries and disabilities, and they require different medicines and lots of care. So for today, you guys are going to meet some of the very special residents that do live here. And I actually have my first one right here with me. So right here, we have what's called a bearded dragon. So the bearded dragons are very special. So of course, you could tell they are a reptile. So this one loves being way up high, and he loves the sunlight that's right above him. But bearded dragons are very interesting animals. And you can see they have these super long tails. But unlike other lizards, they can't actually shed their tail. They stay perfectly intact. Now, so this one is a reptile. And unlike mammals, like people, reptiles are cold-blooded animals. So what that means is that they rely on an external kind of temperature. So they rely on, so for instance, my hand right now and the light above him is keeping him nice and warm. So that's what a cold-blooded animal means. But more about the bearded dragon. So there are 9 different species of bearded dragons, and they are native to Australia. So this one came all the way from over there, and there are 9 different species. They can get up to 2 feet long, so you can see how long this guy gets. Um, but we'll start all the way from the head. So what's really neat is that, so these guys live on the ground. They're terrestrial animals. And so they actually have a special scale right at the tip of their head. It doesn't look any different than any other scales on their body, but it actually helps detect light. Now that is a really very special and important adaptation, because as a land animal, they need to know if that there are any predators above them. Now, before I said I called them the bearded dragon, but of course, they're not dragons, they're reptiles. But you can see if I hold them up that they have a beard right there, and they can actually turn it black. So they turn it black when they are feeling that they need to tell other bearded dragons that they're in their territory, or maybe if he was to look for a bearded dragon girlfriend, he would bob his head up and down really fast and turn it black. So that's a really cool thing that these guys do. So they have very sticky tongues, these guys, because their favorite thing to eat are small insects. So by eating insects, they need to have a very sticky tongue, and that will help grab them. And they also, just like people, do have ears. And you can see right behind the eye, that little hole that this guy has. Now, he's very mobile right now, but right over here, that is their ear. And that ear is helps them hear all the insects crawling over the ground. You can see he has these really cool spikes all throughout the length of his body, and he can actually puff up his body just a little bit to become really sharp. And that'll help with predators or another animal that could be trying to hurt him. So that's a really good defense mechanism that they have. Also, they can whip their tails pretty hard as well, and that serves as another way to help deter predators. So reptiles have scales all along their body. It's like a very special kind of skin. And so those scales run all the way from his head down to the tip of his tail. And I'm going to try to turn him just so you can see all the scales that he has running throughout the length of his body. Okay. So you can also see he's got different kinds of toes than us. Some are much longer than the other, and that helps them with their gripping abilities because, as I said, they love to be up high and they like to climb up and they can see the surroundings all around them. So you can see just by looking at him, the coloration. So just like the color of sand, where these guys are normally hanging out on, they love being around the sand, that yellow body helps them blend into their environment. And having a special adaptation to help blend into their environment, now that is called camouflage. And there are quite a few animals that have that. So I see some people are raising their hands. So when we get to the very end, I will leave some time that we can ask questions about them. And so there'll be a small segment at the end where we can address all those questions. So remember what you're thinking right now, and you can type them in chat when we do discuss those. So the bearded dragon here, we do have three other ones that live here at the refuge, and they're all siblings. They're all brothers and sisters, but we have other animals for you guys to explore today as well. So I'm going to give my little bearded dragon friend here a break, and we can meet our next animal. So just hang tight and I will be right back. Okay, so here at the refuge, we deal with animals of all different shapes and sizes, all different colors, and they all have special, as I said before, kind of injuries and disabilities. So those bearded dragons, as I said before, they're native to Australia, but we have them here at the refuge because they were actually once pets. You can go out and buy a bearded dragon, but that one in particular, he's been in captivity for a very long time because his previous owner could not care for him. So I just wanted to shed some light as to why an animal that's native all the way to a place so far away lives here at the refuge. But with me right here, I have the very next animal, and some people might get a little spooked by this guy because he's so tiny. But right here, I have what's called a Madagascar hissing cockroach. Now, these guys are very different than the cockroaches that you might already know about, but they come all the way from Madagascar. And you can see all the different colorations. And this one right here, this is a female, and she is much, much larger. In fact, they don't fly, so I have nothing to worry about, but they're really cool. And if you guys might have caught what I said, they're called the Madagascar hissing cockroach. And that is because they actually hiss. But what's really, really unique about that is they're not hissing from their mouth. They don't have any kind of vocal cords like you and I do. In fact, what they do is that they breathe, and they have special breathing tubes all throughout the length of their body, and there's tiny little holes all the way around the side of them. And what they do is they force air through that really quickly, and it lets out a kind of noise. So it sounds like they're hissing. So that can help deter any predators, but it's not actually using its mouth. So that's something really cool. So you can see this one is really big. And so I can tell that right off the bat that this is a female. And I'll try to show you how I know. So on the head right there, on that black band, it's either really smooth or really bumpy. But this one right here, I'll try to hold it up really close for you guys to see. You can see there's some bumps, but it's mostly smooth. So I know for sure that this is a female Madagascar hissing cockroach. So I'll hold it also to the side so you can see those legs, but we can see that this cockroach has 6 legs. So that is in fact an insect. So we talked about the top of the head, but you can also see, and I'll try to get a different color background so you can see, there you go, that there's antenna. So this one is looking all the way around, trying to sense where it is and what's going on with it. So what's really cool about them is that they have a very special role in the environment. They're what's called a decomposer, because the favorite thing that these guys like to eat are things that have already started to decay or are dying. So in Madagascar, they'll be along the forest floor, and then fruit will fall off from the trees. They'll have leaves that fall off, and these guys actually use that as their diet. So things that are rotting and also all that plant matter is excellent, excellent nutrition for them. So one of the biggest differences you can see between them and the other animals is that this one has its skeleton on the outside. So that is called an exoskeleton. That's unlike a skeleton on the inside. So that serves as kind of like armor plating for them. It gives them a really hard surface on the outside. But you can see just from looking at it, the cockroach right here is separated into three different parts. So we have the head up top, that black part, the thorax, it's kind of like the chest region, and that's right in the middle. And then, of course, we have the abdomen, which is the lower part, kind of like their bellies. So these guys, they just have this really special role in the environment, and they're really, really cool to look at and have. But of course, they would never do well on the outside here in New York, because if they were released into the environment, they could actually have a really big impact on all the different plants that we have around here. So these guys, they definitely would stay inside. We do not keep them outside at all. But we have a few more animals for us to talk about today. So I'm going to go ahead and give my little cockroach friend a break, and I will take out the next animal for you guys. Okay. All right, so with me is our resident chinchilla, and we call him Nugget. He has a little friend with him that we call Nick Nugget, but this is a chinchilla, and they are actually considered rodents. And but these guys, they're really, really, really cool. So they are mammals first and foremost. So just like you and me, they're not cold-blooded like the reptiles. So they have their own internal body temperature that keeps them nice and warm, and they come all the way from the Andes Mountains in South America. So we can think of other animals that are rodents too. So ones that we have around here might be mice, maybe even squirrels. But what makes a rodent is that their teeth always continuously grow. So they need something to chew on to keep their teeth nice and short. Otherwise, they will keep growing all the way for the rest of their lives. Hi, bud. But this is a really interesting animal because they can live up to 10 years, but you could see they have this really thick and dense coat. So I could see as I touch them. So what's really unique about that dense coat is because they have what's called hair follicles, just like you and I, and there's these tiny little openings on the top of our head where hair grows out of. So for every follicle on a person, it's about 2 or 3 hairs come out of that. But on a chinchilla, it's about 50 hairs per follicle. So they are super duper fluffy. So because they have such dense, thick coats of hair, they actually don't like water for baths. And in fact, I will show you how he likes to take a bath. So I have this tub right here with volcanic ash, and my friend right here is going to go in and we'll see what he does. You want your fan? So while he's doing that, I'm going to talk about what's going on here. So inside this container is volcanic ash, and it's not like dust. It's like so fine and so thin inside. It actually helps permeate or travel through all the hair on his body. And that's kind of like moisturizer for his body. And so typically you could see them dig around, but then they will also roll in it. Maybe he had a bath yesterday, which is why he's not rolling around in it as much, and he just wants to come out and say hello. But what's really cool is that he's got these really large ears. Hi, my friend. Would you like to come out? No bath for you today? So you could see that he has these really large ears, and that helps with their hearing abilities. So these guys, what's cool is that they are nocturnal. So unlike people, which are called diurnal animals, because we are awake in the daytime, they're awake all throughout the night. So you can see they have these really large ears, and they have really large whiskers, and that helps them find their way around in the ground. So they're herbivores, which means that they like to eat plants. They don't eat any kind of meat or any kind of mixture of plants or meat, which would make them an omnivore. You He seems to want to go back into his bath. So let's see if my friend wants to take a moment and take a bath. So I'll hold him up and we'll see what he does. And you don't have to worry because that there are openings at the top of this cage, so he can breathe just fine. But let's see. No. No, so he doesn't want a bath today, which is perfectly fine for them. But what's really interesting is that these guys were originally brought over from South America to become pets. Now, it's said that the original colony, the original group of them was called a colony, and that every chinchilla that's in the pet trade actually originated from the same colony, which is really interesting. But you can see he's just relaxing right now. So oftentimes people ask me, is this a good pet? And I usually like to say no for a number of reasons. First and foremost, they have so much hair on them and they're so dense, they do shed a lot. So people with allergies, they don't really do too well with them. That's why we actually have this, because he is actually an abandoned pet. And they also do like to go to the bathroom everywhere. So they don't make the best pet whatsoever, especially if you don't like cleaning. But we have a few more animals for you guys to come and meet today. So I'm going to go ahead and give my chinchilla friend here a break, and I will return with the next animal. All right, so with me is a corn snake. So this here is my friend named Checkers. Oh, he is being a little squirmy today. But what's really cool about Checkers here, you can see him flicking his tongue back and forth really quickly. Now, what the snake is doing is he's actually smelling the air around him. Maybe he notices that a chinchilla was here not too long ago. But that's a really cool adaptation that these guys have. So before I said that they were called corn snakes, and I'm gonna slowly turn him upside down so you could see his belly. You see that white with the black all around? So it kind of looks like what's called Indian corn. So that's one of the things that is why they are called corn snakes. They're actually found all throughout the southern US. So from all the way from New Jersey to southern US, you won't really find these guys in the wild. But you could they as a reptile, they actually do shed their skin. So they do shed their skin every couple of months, and that's kind of like putting on a new coat. It's a good way for them to kind of bathe themselves. He is super mobile today, so he is quite squirmish today. We actually have a lot of snakes on Long Island. We have about 7 different species of them, but they're actually all non-venomous. So you have nothing to worry about with them. They're actually, and so corn snakes and all the snakes on Long Island, as a matter of fact, are what's called constrictors. And what that means is that they wrap their prey up before they do eat them. So you have nothing to worry about in terms of that. So even if you were to be, God forbid, bit by one of them, it's not a danger to you. So these guys have no venom at all. So some of the snakes on Long Island would be garter snakes. We also have a hognose snake and a black racer snake as well. And there you can see him lick. It's pretty cool. But what he's doing is just sniffing the air around him. So Checkers is here also because he was an abandoned pet. So he lives here at the refuge. He's been here for about 15 years, and we can estimate that he can go well into his 20s when they live in captivity because he gets the best possible care that he can get here at the refuge. So when people usually come to the refuge, they like to touch the snakes, and they usually ask me, what do they feel like? Because some people are too scared to touch them. And I say that they kind of feel like a cold basketball because just like the other reptiles, they have scales that run all throughout the length of their body. And even up close, you can see it kind of looks like a basketball. But snakes, they're very, very muscular. So he's just like one large muscle, and you can see how he is on my hands. He's kind of wrapped up all the way around because he's really enjoying the warmth from my body. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and give our corn snake a little break because he is a little squirmy today, but we will meet the coolest animal of all in just a moment. All right, guys, so now I'm about to grab our last animal. Now, this one requires very special care. So with me is called a gauntlet. So this right here is a very, very thick glove because I need this in order to keep myself safe as well as the animal. So you might want to take some guesses as to what animal I might be taking out now. So here at the refuge, we have lots of different birds that I care for. So you will be meeting one right now. Good job. Work with me. Okay, so with me is Hooter, the great horned owl. Oh, and I'm sure you guys can hear the hoots that he is making. So Hooter is a great horned owl, and I'm sure you guys see that he's got these what some people might think are horns, but they're just feather tufts. So great horned owls, they're found all throughout the United States. Now Hooter here actually has a few different injuries. So he originally came to us. I'm sorry, Hooter. You can hear him hooting. Hooter originally came all the way from Utah. So he was actually illegally raised as a pet. Now, owls do not make great pets at all. First of which, it's illegal to raise any kind of wild animal. But um, when an animal grows and develops, it needs to understand who it is as a species. So I know I'm a human because my mom and dad taught me that. He never quite understood how to be an owl. So all throughout his young and adult life, he learned that people are helpful. People are the ones that bring him food. So he never learned how to hunt. So Hooter here is what's called imprinted. So what's really interesting with Hooter is that as an owl, they have a lot of different adaptations and things that make them so special. So I'll actually come a little bit off camera, but I'll put him right in full view for you guys to see. So the first of which is that he's got these great big eyes. As compared to me, you could see that his eyes are even bigger, even though he's a lot smaller. So if people had the same size eyes as an owl does, our eyes would actually be the size of grapefruits because they are so powerful. So within their eyes, we have rods and cones that helps us see with depth perception, our peripheral vision, as well as color. But so owls, they can actually see in a different spectrum of light than we can. It's called ultraviolet light. He does make interesting vocalizations. So you might hear him like whistling right now. He has a series of hoots as well. But so on the topic of their vision, so they can see great distances, they can see really far away, and their hearing is actually amazing. So if I was to take my two fingers and rub them back and forth, it makes kind of like a little sound. In fact, great horned owls can hear that tiny little sound all the way at the end of a basketball court. Their sound is so great. Now, our ears are left and right on the sides of our heads, perfectly symmetrical. Owls have what's called asymmetrical hearing. And what that means is that behind Hooter's eyes, his ears are located right here and one on the other side, but they're uneven. One ear is higher than the other. And what that means is that they are able to find out if a sound is coming from above or below. So these guys live up in trees. So if a sound is coming from below and hits this ear first, they go, oh, the sound's coming from below. However, if it hits the other ear, they know to look up, and that's where the sound is coming from. So that adaptation is called triangulating sound. Owls also, since their eyes are so big, they can't move their eyes like we can, left and right, up and down. They're permanently stuck in one position, and that's why they're able to turn their head really far away. So we can turn about 180 degrees left and right, but owls can turn about 270 degrees. So if you imagine if you have a pizza pie and you take one slice out, that's the full range of motion an owl can turn its head. Hi, Hooter. So, as we go along, now I'll talk about the wings in just a second, but he's a pretty big bird. You can see in comparison to my arm, he's pretty big. So, you'll see just how large he is. Now, he's a pretty big bird. Now, I'm going to ask you guys a question. And so, I'm going to say, do you think he's really heavy or not? So, you can go ahead. If you can raise your hand if you think he's 1 pound. Okay. Do you think he's 3 pounds? Do you think he's 20 pounds? Oh, some of you guys think I'm really that strong. But in fact, Hooter is only about 3 pounds. He's super duper light. Now, and that's because their bones are a lot different than ours. So their bones are hollow. So if you imagine the inside of a paper towel roll, it's this really thin cardboard tube with nothing on the inside, and that's kind of like what their bones look like. And so when they break, they tend to shatter. And so when these guys do get injuries, it's usually like a wing injury, they can't fly again. And that's why some of the other birds that we have here at the refuge live here. But Hooter here, there's something else a little bit up with him. So since he's an older guy, he's about 23 years old, he actually lost his sense of sight. So what's interesting is there's no reaction at all because Hooter actually can't see either. So we guys have a very special relationship where he relies on me for his sense of understanding where he is. So he's relying on me to be his perch right now, and I'm relying on him to behave. So we have a very special relationship. But these guys, they have a very unique sense of flying. So along the length of their feathers, and I'll try to bring it as close as I can for you guys to see. It might be not that easy to see, but along the length of his feathers right there, it kind of looks like a hair comb. So it's like these little bristles, and it's really tough to see, but I'll do the best I can with the camera. And so those little bristles, you might actually be able to see it over here. Right there is actually a pretty good spot. And that's what gives these guys silent flight. So owls actually can fly completely silent at night. That's one of the adaptations that they have. Okay. So you can see these feathers he has go all the way across down his legs and over his feet. And so that keeps him really super warm. And that's why the owl, the great horned owl, can survive in the New York climates that we have where it's really super cold. But I know it's summer right now and it's super hot out. So how do they stay warm in the summer? So when an owl fluffs up, or any bird in general, it doesn't necessarily have to be an owl, what they're doing is they're trapping that cold air underneath those feathers, and that is that's keeping them nice and cool. Hi. So those are just some of the adaptations. Now, before I said I had to wear this gauntlet for my safety. So you could see that he has these really sharp talons on his feet. But did you know how strong they actually are? So if I was to take my hand and squeeze down as hard as I can, that's about between 50 to 100 pounds of pressure per square inch. But the great horned owl, if they were to grab down, It's about 500 to 550 pounds of pressure per square inch. So it's well over 10 of me at the same time squeezing down. So that's just gives you guys an idea of how strong and how powerful the great horned owl is. Okay. One other thing I wanted to show you guys, and it's super cool. He has a special adaptation that your cats and dogs at home might have. Now, I'm going to bring him really close to the camera, and you guys might be able to see that Hooter does, in fact, actually have whiskers. I know that's wild. Why would a bird have whiskers? Now, remember I was talking about how they can't move their eyes up and down? So they need to be able to determine if something is in front of them. So something will brush up against those whiskers, and that's where he knows his food is. So I want to show you guys something really cool. So owls have about 9,000 feathers on their body, much more actually. But remember how I said he's only 3 pounds? He looks about twice to 3 times the size that he actually is. So I'm gonna go ahead and touch his chest, but look how far my finger goes before I actually touch him. Hi, Hooter. Hi, buddy. Hello. Now I'm actually touching him. So all that is all just feathers on him. So he's actually much tinier than he actually looks. Okay. So we can take a few moments to ask a few questions. And so Hooter, do you want to say goodbye to everyone? Do you want to say goodbye? All right. So we can take some time for questions. You can feel free to unmute yourself, or if you'd like, you could type it within the chat and I will address your guys'. Okay, go right ahead. So I see questions over there. Feel free to ask them. I see you guys.
Hi.
Hello. What was your question?
I have two actually. My first question is, can the bearded what is it called
The
again?
bearded dragon.
Yes, can it camouflage?
Yeah, so the bearded dragon, you see how yellow he was? He kind of blends in perfectly with the sand. So he absolutely has camouflage on his body. And in fact, on the topic of camouflage, you see Hooter's feathers? You see how he looks just like a pine tree? So
Yeah.
Hooter also does has camouflage as well, just like that the bearded dragon that you guys met.
And my second question was, can the animals that are there, can they be adopted or not?
That's a good question. No, unfortunately, the animals that we have at the refuge cannot be adopted. However, some of them actually do make suitable pets, just like the bearded dragon. But they would I would recommend reading at least a few books on them first, because they do have a very special diet. So the bearded dragon, the favorite thing that they like to eat are crickets. Now, you can imagine trying to keep crickets in your home at the same time? So maybe if you have parents that you're still living with, it might be a big no-no, because you would have to have crickets in addition to having all the special needs that
Oh, we do have
might
fish.
have. Oh, very cool. But you can always look up more about the bearded dragons, because they're very relaxed and chilled out animals. They do make great pets.
Thank you.
You're
Thank you.
welcome.
No, hold on. And also we have a baby fish.
Very cool. Does anyone else have any questions about any of the animals that you met today? You met the bearded dragon. You guys met the hissing cockroach. You guys met a corn snake. Of course, you met the great horned owl. You
Can
okay?
the owl be in a pet store?
I'm sorry. Can you say your question again?
Can the owl be in a pet store?
Um, I don't quite understand. Are you asking that? Can he?
She's asking if the owl could be a pet.
No, no, not at all. So I'll tell you guys why owls do not make great pets. So first of which, they need a mom and dad owl to teach them how to be an owl. People will not do a good job at that. So that's the first thing. Secondly, they have a very special role in the ecosystem. And what that means is that every animal has a very special job that they do. So in his instance, he takes care of all the rodents. So they love to eat mice and rats. And but if so people kept them as pets, that means more mice and rats would start to build up in the ecosystem. So they are really good at controlling that population. Third of which, it's actually illegal. So in 1918, the Migratory Bird Treaty Act was passed, giving these guys a very special federal protection that you cannot keep any birds that are in the wild as pets. So he cannot, to answer your question, he would not make a good pet.
Um, um, I have a question.
Sure, go ahead.
Can can the can the owl fly?
That's a great question. So Hooter here actually does not fly, and that's because he cannot see. So since he can't see, if he was to fly around, he would really bump into things. So he doesn't want to do that. So what we do for Hooter, since he likes to walk along the ground, is that we keep his box, his owl house, all right along the ground. And also I put his food in the same spot every single day. That way, pardon me, he understands that the food is in the same spot all the time, so he has nothing to worry about. Wait, that was a good question. Does anyone else have any other questions in regards to the animals that you met today? You can feel free to unmute yourself. I see a question in the chat. Does the owl's pupil size still change with the lighting? That's great. Great question. Typically, an owl would, you would see that their pupils would dilate or they would change in regards to the lighting. They do. However, he only reacts very slightly. But in the wild, an owl's pupils definitely would. Hooter is a very special case because of his vision issues, so it might not change as much.
Excuse me. You think that the lizard uses spikes? Anything?
Yeah, that's actually a great question. So the bearded dragon, he has these rows of spikes that are all along the edge of his body. He can use them in defense. So what he could do is if he notices that a predator, maybe a kind of bird of prey, is looking at him like a hawk, he can actually puff up his body real tightly and make those spikes stand on end, and that would be used in defense. But he can't shoot them out or anything. They're a part of his body. But that's a great question.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. Does anyone else have any other questions?
I have a question.
Go for it.
Is Hooter the only owl you have at the refuge, or are there others?
Good question. So we have a lot of birds of prey. We do have another great horned owl. He is from New York natively, so he is a darker color. So he is one of the others. Some other birds we have here at the refuge would be red-tailed hawks. We have an American kestrel, which is actually a falcon. We do have a peregrine falcon, and quite a few others that do live outside. Some of the other animals that are in the exhibits, we do have a red fox. We also have a Virginia opossum, and so we have. Oh, and of course, I can't forget about our groundhog as well. And he just woke up from his hibernation about 2 months ago. So those are just some of the animals that you can come meet totally for free any day of the week that you guys would like to. Okay. All right. So that about wraps it up for today, guys. So guys, thank you very much for coming to the Port Jefferson Free Library. I know that in the beginning, they talked about a lot of the cool events that they're offering. And of course, thank you guys very much for learning about the wildlife that we have here at the Quogue Wildlife Refuge. So Hooter, would you like to say goodbye to this wonderful audience today? There we are.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you to Dan and Hooter and all of his friends. Thank you.
You're welcome. Have a
We
great
hope
day,
to see you
guys.
guys in the library, and hopefully you guys get to visit Quogue Wildlife Refuge. It's beautiful there.
All right. Have a great day, guys. Thank you for coming
Bye.
today.